thank everybody for coming out this evening. I'm Brian Risley, City Council Member at Large.
And Dave Leinweber, City Council Member at Large.
There you go. And so we're doing a series of these state of community meetings and wanting to gather your input, your thoughts, and I appreciate you all coming out to hear what we have to say and to visit with us. Dave, do you want to talk about your technology?
Yeah. So we're going to start with, so what we're going to do first is we want to make sure we're talking to what you guys want to hear. And so to kind of help us with that, we've got a little exercise. So you need to pull your phone out. Yeah, it's one of those things. And you can scan. Let me get out of the way. And can everyone get that? You can scan this deal. And what it is once you scan that, you'll get there and you'll be on. You've got the waiting thing, and you're not scanning.
How millennial of you.
Right? No, but I mean, like, we actually talked at Kids and Cannibals, and we both kind of thought, wow, we went through that whole presentation and really didn't give them any time, and we didn't know what were their concerns. So we kind of want to know that. So, so what we're thinking is that you guys can scan this, and so what I want you to do is I'm going to go to the next screen, I'm going to ask a question, and I'd like you to think of like a one-word or a two-word phrase or something like that, and I'd like you to type it in. Okay? All right? So that's kind of where we're going to go right now. Your phones should change, and the question is, what is the biggest concern you have for the Pikes Peak region? Think of like one word that just comes to mind, or a two-word phrase, or something like that. Type it in, and as you type it, this will start to populate. Now, here's what I'm going to let you do. So here's what we got. So we've got stuff populating. Now, I'm going to let you keep typing words in, and you can type 4 to 6 times and submit. You might pick something here that you particularly like. You might want to elevate it, right? Or you might want to put something new in. So grab think of a word or think of a different word. It might be more dog parks. It could be more fat tire trails. It could be, or it could be like you're actually like pushing something that's big here. Affordability is coming up. Public safety is coming up as kind of like the big things. And we're just kind of seeing, like, you guys are all kind of voting here. You may want to vote for something twice if you want it. But don't like exaggerate it too much. But if it's like really important to you, this gives us an idea of kind of like, what's this room, what does this room feel right now? So we've got, looks like affordability is ahead, housing affordability, yeah, we've got two different, so sometimes we get two phrases that are kind of probably maybe, could be similar, right? Housing affordability is coming up, public safety is here, roads versus curbs, okay. We've got homeless is popping down, suicide's over here, overpopulation, it's getting smaller though. Housing affordability keeps coming up quite a bit. I think we might have a developer kind of pushing that. Anyway, all right. Well, I think that's good. I mean, so what we're gathering is that we've got a room here that really is prioritizing housing affordability, and that's something that we've heard, right, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and we're trying to work on several of those type of issues, and kind of go, oh, here, I'm liking this one. Council pay. That's coming. I'll make that a little bit. Public safety we got public safety, we got homeless, we've got some other things, housing, illegal immigrants, okay, overdevelopment, 2025 election. Okay, drug overdose, fentanyl. Okay, that's kind of a little bit related to some mental health issues. Mental health, we got water. Okay, that's good. All right, now,
Well done.
so these are things we got to work on. These are the negative things, right? Well, I hate leaving on a negative point. So I also want to know, what's the best thing about the Pikes Peak area? What's the best thing? What are the things that we should be elevating? You know?
You love about the community.
What do you love
this
about the
place?
community? What do you love about this place? What's one word, 2 words, you know? If you want to go up, it's got to be like a key, you know, thing. So things are coming in, beauty, outdoor opportunities, mountains, recreation. Now you're hitting my stuff right now. I mean, you're in my bandwidth right now. I love this. Military community, okay? Outdoors, mountains. Mountains is pretty big. Outdoor, recreation, military, hunting, beauty.
Nobody's saying anything about like local breweries or small
Right? Beer. Yeah, beer quality. Location, outdoor choices. That's a little open-ended. Business opportunities, sense of community, hunting, parks, neighbors, open space, beer. We finally got there. Outdoor opportunities. Anyway, these are kind of fun. Mountains. You know what? I find it interesting with all the talk lately, and this is, you know, this might show my bias, but it never said Olympic City, USA.
I noticed that. Somebody mentioned that was...
Something said mountains quite a bit here. Huh. Oh, well, that's interesting. Anyway, just comment. Anyway, this is great. We're excited to share. I'm going to switch over here. Why don't you start talking?
Well, so I guess while we're switching over, I do want to thank FH Brew
Yes.
Beer Works for allowing us to host this here. I think, you know, Dave had the great idea, instead of having a boring meeting at a library or a school or something like that, why not celebrate the incredible small businesses that we have here and do it in a fun place where you can have a nice drink and it's more of a social kind of a hangout sort of a place. So we really appreciate being able to have it here, and again, thanks for everybody that took the time to come out. You know, we do want to keep this informal, and we want to keep this a very dynamic sort of conversation. So we have some slides that we did prepare that we thought would probably resonate with the topics that you all just identified. We'll go through those, but you'll see that with every topic that we're going to touch on, we're going to ask for feedback and input on what other things we're not doing and we're not talking about. And what other concerns you have. And so, given that it's a small group, by all means, if you've got a question, feel free to just chime in, and we're happy to have an open dialogue. So, I think you probably all know that David and I were both elected just about a year ago. So, you know, a year ago we were on the campaign trail, and I've really enjoyed serving alongside President Helms and all of our other fellow council members. I think we've got a really good group of decision makers at this point. We all don't agree on everything all the time, but I think the majority of us are pretty rational and level-headed decision makers, and I think we all understand trying to keep the key things about Colorado Springs intact and keep that as our focus. So with that, do you want to kind of roll into the
let's jump into it. So the first topic we're going to get, we've kind of like made an assumption based off of our things people are talking about that it would fall underneath public safety, economic vitality, and affordability and quality of life. So what we just learned, actually I didn't hear about this very much.
And there were some snippets
Which one?
of it.
Snippets of it. Economic vitality.
I think
But affordability kind of rose to the top. So we'll try to focus a little bit more on that and get some conversation going with you guys about those things.
Yeah.
So anyway, so let's start with public safety. So jump right in?
Sure.
Here we go.
Yeah, so with public safety, maybe just a few updates for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the things that the city is working on right now. We've had conversations with the police department about leveraging technology as a force multiplier, and I'll give you an example of that. Right now, there are a number of intersections around town where we have cameras, right? So somebody rolls through a red light, camera takes a picture, you get a ticket in the mail. The police department has proposed doing something similar with speeding in safety zones, school zones, construction zones. So that's certainly something that's been discussed here recently. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation around focusing on how do we attract and retain law enforcement officers? How do we leverage civilian staff so that the what I want to call it, the sworn officers can focus more on higher priority issues. So those are all things that are being discussed.
Well, I think it focus on better training. I don't know if anyone saw the news about Pueblo. They're 50 officers short, and they just chose to kind of reduce their standard. So they're lowering the bar in order to get more officers in there. And I mean, what do you think about like that kind of thing? I mean, we're short officers. I don't know if I'm quite ready to lower the bar. Eric, I think I'd like to raise the bar, because I think that's what you drive professionalism, and that's a place you'd want to work that has high standards. And that's where I would want to work.
I agree completely. I mean, if you think about the fact that Colorado Springs Police Department trains its officers twice as many hours as the post standards, the public safety standards of the state, that to me says that we have a really strong emphasis on good training, on training beyond just the minimum. And so the downside to that, which I don't think is a downside, but the consequence, I suppose, of that is that we can't just hire any old cop off the street, because we expect them to perform at a higher level and at a better level than maybe the cops in Pueblo or maybe the cops in Castle Rock. And so as a result, that does make it more difficult to find qualified officers, which is honestly why we train officers the way we do, and why having a training academy is such a huge deal. Mike?
So do we think that it's a pay issue, or do we think it's a not learning capacity, but the training facility not being large enough to bring more officers? Or do we think, because we're short, right? We're
Right.
short officers. Do we think it's strictly pay? Is it a matter of putting
No,
resources?
I would put number one is it's a morale issue.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily a morale issue against the current leadership. It's a morale issue against the community not supporting the police like we should be. We should be right behind them, understanding that they're human, understanding that, yeah, someone's going to screw up someplace because they're in a high stress situation.
Right.
But right now, many officers feel like that, you know, if they blow it, they make that mistake.
Yeah, they're
done.
Their career is done, their lifetime.
Right.
But do you think that's hampering people coming into the profession or leaving the profession once they're in? Because I would think that
It's both.
Yeah,
we had a lot of early retirement. I mean, COVID, I think, helped that, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people that probably just did that. And I'd be honest, I think the riots that took place and all of that really affected a lot. I personally know a police officer that was planning to stay longer, but after those riots, he was just like, why do I need to be doing this?
Right.
So,
Is the liability issue come up? Are the police officers liable and the city's not standing up behind them to protect them?
So we've stood behind every officer.
Yeah.
We just had an open session defending two police officers Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think
We've
that
had
that should
police
be-
officers that we've settled on because it was clear to us that there was some culpability there.
Right.
It's better to say.
Just communicating that, because that came up, a year ago or something, and it sounded like the city was stepping back from that the police officer was taking on more liability than they used to.
I don't think in the springs.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
It was
elsewhere.
outside.
I think elsewhere, but I think, so are you guys, are we gonna get to the point where what the community can do to help this issue, or are we just
we would
soliciting
love to hear
input?
that. Absolutely.
Because I mean, there was that program that was going on with the billboards and stuff, and see a cop, thank a cop, and all that stuff,
Right.
right? I don't know how of an impact that had. I don't know. You know, it's-
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that was Tim Lee's initiative,
Yeah.
and I think his goal is to make Colorado Springs the safest city in America. That's his
Yeah.
slogan.
Right.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that, right? If this is the safest city in the U.S., by definition, that means that people will be drawn to live here. They
Right.
want to live in a safe place.
Right.
The economic vitality will improve as a result of people feeling safe and being safe in the
Right.
community. So, I don't know, Mike, how much of that messaging resonated with the average citizen. I don't
Yeah.
know to what degree people are cognizant of that or really paid attention to that. But as this room demonstrated, public safety is the #1 concern.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too that oftentimes when we talk about public safety, it immediately goes to law enforcement. And that's probably the primary concern, but as you know, there are a lot of other aspects of public safety that I think are on the minds of many residents. And so how we fold those other concerns into the conversation is important, I think, as well.
I mean, I'm challenging Pete Lee right now because we all like the phrase "safest city in America."
Right.
Who doesn't want to adopt that? But I'm like, okay, well, give me the details.
Yeah.
What's your details?
Yeah.
And he's trying to put together some thoughts, and I'm thinking of some thoughts and we're looking at, I may partner with him a little bit on kind of crafting or thinking that through because it is more than law enforcement.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was
No, it's
wondering what I didn't know if it was a pay issue, because if you talk to Tim, he'll say, pay. I mean, that's part of it too,
Well.
like pay and stuff. And that seems too simplistic to me. So, and I
But,
think you just stated
what Tim will have a challenge with is I'll go, okay, so you should we put a ballot and increase our taxes
Right,
to pay the police more?
yeah.
I mean,
We did that with BSST. So,
Public safety.
yeah.
or
Yeah.
public safety sales tax.
Right,
So that's forever.
yeah.
So that's there.
And
Yeah.
I think
That's true.
today's
So I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean,
No.
again, we want this to be an
Yeah.
open dialogue.
Oh, that's what we want. We want it to be
Absolutely.
interrupted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Dave's point, when we ask police officers, well, how much would it take for you to stay, or how much would it cost for us to recruit you? It really isn't about pay. I mean, certainly there are levels that
Sure.
make sense, but if you think about what these guys women do on a daily basis, right? They're putting their lives on the line
Yeah.
every single day that they put on that badge.
Yeah.
And so, how much is that worth to you, Mike? $80,000? $1 million a day? I mean, what?
Right.
And so pay is important, but what we're seeing is that is not the driver.
Okay, it's the morale.
It's the morale and it's.
Yeah, I mean, people want to live here,
Yeah,
and particularly the military community, and we do get a lot of police officers from the military community. So I think we have opportunities there that I think we're already looking at.
Typically, around 25 to 30% of every class has military experience from the last graduating classes I've been to.
right.
And from my viewpoint, police officers I talk to want to have more police officers on the street. They want the response times to come down.
Right.
They want additional police officers, and there's really only a couple ways to do that.
But I'm sitting here when you say morale and stuff, as a community, I'm just wondering, that's a complicated, interesting question, right? How do we?
It is.
How does the community come around, basically put our arms around these guys and say, and women that we're there for them, how is that done, right? That's an interesting.
Well, I mean, usually, I think in the past, when we grew up, you kind of had the Ken doll that was a police officer and the Ken doll that was a fireman, and they were equals, right?
Right.
The firemen, they still kind of are the same. They go and they put out fire, and actually, it's gotten a little bit more complicated with fire. But the police officers right now, I mean, the things they're dealing with, like with mental health
It's unbelievable.
and the drug issue and the stuff, and just the idea that they arrest this guy and he's on the street tomorrow, right? I mean, it's just like, what are we doing?
Right.
And so I think there's some issues like that
Yeah.
that I think are demoralizing. I've talked to some OT team people, and they're just like, yeah, he's got 12, warrants out on right now, but it's not enough to bring him in quite yet. It's like, well, wait. If there's one warrant, it should be enough, right?
I was on a jury and the police officer had to come in and they just raked him over the coals, right? And you just go, man, guy's out there trying to do his job.
And do the right
raking him
thing.
over the
Yeah.
coals.
Yeah.
Right, so those type of things, I can see where they would get frustrated.
I think it's gotta be it is one of the toughest jobs in America right now, by far, no question. The amount of pressure.
No question.
Alan, did you have a comment or question?
Yes, actually, two of them. One was like, we talk about getting more training for the police officers in CSPD. I'd love to see that. But with all the stress that they're under and their own mental health and what have you, what type of resources does CSPD have for their own people, which you would think would help with morale? And
So they've actually launched several programs. They've been partnering with NAMI, and they have several internal programs right now.
Okay.
They actually just came out with a film series to talk about police officers and their spouse and how to weather that, how to work together as a team at home so that he or she could be more effective, at their job. The video that I saw was just really off the chart. It was great. It was self-produced. And so they're pretty focused right now on that. How do we keep morale up and high? But I have to be honest, it's tough. And there was a survey that came out that said that, you gotta keep touching it, that our officers right now are saying that their morale is kind of low. And they do point to leadership. There was some of that. I would tend to think it's more of, there's just a societal component right now that's really makes it tough.
So how does our morale compare to other communities? And if it's low here, is it low everywhere? Are we lower than others? Do we know that based on surveys?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think there's a way to compare that. So this survey was taken by the police union.
Right.
And they didn't have to share it.
Right.
But they did share it with the mayor.
Right.
And then I made a request that the mayor would share that with us, and he did.
In an open forum.
In an open forum. In a public forum, but not on the dais, but it was in another venue. And so we kind of learned more about it. And, it's probably one of the most challenging divisions or departments in our city right now, personnel-wise, to kind of really wrestle and deal with, for sure.
I like to share something that, it's anecdotal. So as a kid, my father was a police officer growing up in Northeast Texas. He was a police officer for many years, but in the 50s and the 60s. But he got out and did other things for the same reasons we hear about today. And we're talking, 60 years ago. So things don't change about your police force across the country. Every community is a little different, but every community has the same issues of whether a police officer feels accepted in the community or not. And again, it's anecdotal, but that's an example of what I saw growing up. As my father was a police officer. So I see that
They
here.
struggle with the same issues.
Same issues.
Other than leadership, what are the top 5? What else is there that they're saying in the survey?
I think training was part of it. I know they're wrestling, and there's been a lot of, the big issue, really, one of the biggest issues is dealing with our homeless population and mental health crisis issues that they have to do that. Because you just never know what's going to happen. These people, they can just be a threat on just instantly. And so, and it's not, so there's a couple of things that we've been doing as a city that's really kind of helped feed into that a little bit. One is our fire department has taken on a much greater role. Our fire department's taken the lead.
That's,
And the reason for that, yeah, it's on right here. The reason for that is because when a police officer shows up, that's authority, right? When a fireman shows up, that's a guy that wants to help.
Interesting, okay.
See what's going on.
No badge,
And
no
so
gun.
they've learned that.
Right.
And so we have these hot teams that have developed, which have a police officer that's there for, to protect the area, protect the situation. A fireman, a paramedic officer is there, and then a mental health worker is there. And there's these groups of 3. I think we have maybe 4.
Yes.
4 of them that kind of rotate.
4 hot teams.
4 hot teams that rotate through
Hop.
the city. Hop teams. Yes.
And since they're leading the way, they're apparently willing and wanting to take that on.
Yes.
Huh.
and they've seen great results
That's
going
good.
through that
I
program.
hadn't heard that, so that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we've actually gotten our population, and it's one of the reasons, I mean, obviously we see the homeless out there. But we don't have it at the same level as other cities and communities that are dealing with it at all. And I think it's really because of the policies that we have in place and really the tough stand that we're kind of taking on. But it's not, I mean, there's a personal piece there. I was actually, some of you know I've been out walking for petitions. And so I visited this guy 2 weeks ago. His name was Brian. I knocked on his door. Nicest house, really complicated. The house was amazing, and probably $1 million, whatever. And he said, so why are you running, all this kind of stuff. And he said, oh, so you're prioritizing mental health. That's important to me. Let me tell you why. My son has been on the street for like the last 7 months, and I literally have not known how to solve that problem. And so here's a successful guy, right? Would never know. And it's his son that's sleeping on the creek bed right now, right?
Right.
So it's our community and families that are really struggling with this. So it's not so much of us them. It's really us.
Right.
It
Right?
could happen to anybody.
Yeah,
It really can. You can get yourself in a place like that. And so, anyway, and most of the issues that we're talking about are really the ones that are, really mental health and drug addiction, and they're just caught at the very, very bottom. The other part of homelessness that we're not talking about is the ones that just lose their job, get kicked out, because of evil landlords.
You're not implying anything there.
No.
I would like to add one,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a final thing or not on that.
No.
And again, I go back to the number of police officer candidates we can put through our training academy on a yearly basis to be able to climb, not only to climb to in our city, we have 818 authorized sworn positions, sworn meaning badged police officer. And of those 818, we roughly hang around 760, 770 actually on the street right now, as I say on the street. So the additional, 50, 60 that we seem to have that issue because we have that many retiring every year or leaving, to replace not only those, but to grow beyond that so we can get to 818 and above. Eventually, even a higher authorization than 818, we need to train more. We need to train 120 a year, somewhere around 120 a year. The only way we can do that is to have at least 3 classes a year going through the training academy. And to do that, we've got to have a larger training academy to do that. That's my 2 cents on all that. I don't want to open up a bunch of can of worms on that, but that's the Randy Helms theory. how we as a council can help.
So where does that stand, right? The voters rejected.
They didn't reject the training academy, they rejected
the
2A with the Tabor.
Right, so where does that stand
4.75
now?
million.
What's the next step?
It's moving forward. Right now, they're looking at sites
Okay.
and they're looking at ways to work it within the budget moving forward. What they heard from the decline of that is that, hey, you're asking us for money and you're not telling us how you're gonna spend it,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, we didn't know how we were gonna spend it because we just, as you know, you need upfront money to get an idea going, right? And that's kind of what we were trying to communicate and it didn't quite happen.
Because I can't imagine the community will overwhelmingly support that concept ultimately.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If they have.
But I think it's gonna be probably reasonable, and there's
Yeah.
several, I think they're, right now, from what, in talking to the mayor and stuff, they're looking at, well, where can these sites be, and of course, working with the chief, and
Maybe just-
works best.
Yeah, maybe just a little extra detail on that. So the mayor did stand up a solutions team to focus on
Yeah.
what is the next step for the training academy. I'm on that, and there are a number of others, and a representative from LETAC, there are a number of other sort of community stakeholders that are involved. And as David said, we're studying and looking at a number of different possibilities, everything from expanding the existing academy, buying some property that's adjacent to it. There are a few community groups in town who have suggested donating or selling to the city for a very reasonable price, some existing facilities that could be renovated and remodeled into an academy. We're looking at raw land that potentially could be purchased. And I think part of the reason for formulating a solutions team like that is that I think, you know, it was very clear that, at least when this idea was introduced to us, that there hadn't been a lot of thought around, do we need to build a new facility? Can we remodel an existing building? Where in town should this be? And so in many ways, the solutions team is taking a step back and asking all of those important questions and being much more methodical about it, so that when we do bring something forward, it's brought forward with some clarity, some justification, and some understanding of why we are arriving at the suggestion or the solution that we're putting forward. And combined with that, as David said, is to understand also the funding piece of it. So we don't want to suggest something that doesn't have a funding mechanism. We don't want to suggest something that is not ultimately fiscally responsible for the city and for the community. But I believe we all do acknowledge that if we want to have a world-class police force, we've got to have a world-class training program. So the trick is, how do we get there? And that's what the solutions team is focused on.
Okay. But I think there's another component to this too that we should not devalue, and that is, we don't wait until it becomes a problem. And what we've been talking about up to this point is that we need police officers to take care of the problem. We need to work with the community ahead of time and find ways to help families, communities, really kind of help the youth grow up in a way that there's stronger moral values and things like that. And we're going to have to attack that. I mean, there's a viral video of a 15-year-old girl that's banging another girl against the pavement that went around the last couple days.
But that's not here.
It wasn't here, but it was talked about here.
Yeah.
And, but the thing is our DA responded to that and said, well, that happens here, like on a regular basis. And so there's an element where we need to kind of find a way to support organizations that are coming alongside of families that are at risk and really support them. And I think that's community centers, I think that's, you know, other things that can kind of help reach out and try to be proactive. I think that's what we've got to look at, is develop kind of more of a proactive component to our community. And I mean, those are some of the things that we've got in mind. We've got a couple things that I'll talk about here shortly.
Are there other cities that are not having as much of a problem on the recruiting that you can emulate whatever they're doing? And then is the Pikes Peak State College program just starting? Has it been there? We know that Grand Junction and Mesa University has a fairly big police academy association there, and it seems like it's successful. Is that just getting started, or has that been around for a while?
I guess I can't speak to the duration of that, Don, but what I can say is that there have been a lot of concerted efforts around understanding, and we even have it up here, sort of a regional collaboration, right? There has been a lot of discussion around regional collaboration with Pikes Peak State College, with the Sheriff's Department, because they obviously train law enforcement officers as well. But on top of that, there's been a lot of conversation with the K-12 school community about creating criminal justice career pathways that go from, Michael Gall, the superintendent of District 11, always jokes that the very best police officers were the ones that spent all of their time in detention in high school. So, why can't we figure out how to get those kids in high school that are the troublemakers that eventually want to, end up in a criminal justice role as a law enforcement officer or something else? How do we tap into that pipeline? How do we get them engaged? And it's a win-win, right? Because it gives kids a focus, it gives them a career pathway, and it creates that pipeline that we need coming up through not just K-12 and Pikes Peak State College, but the training academy that the city runs as well. So I think those are all really important. Again, it sort of goes back to and ties into the notion of training our officers to a higher standard than other communities. And so I think when you talk about, are other communities doing better or worse than we are, it's sort of comparing apples and oranges, because again, we have an excellent world-class expectation. And so if other communities that have a lower bar, they're obviously going to be able to attract and retain a lower quality officer.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So on the last one, organizationally with Chosen Open Space Coalition, we always get a lot of people saying, hey, what about all these people that are camping along the trails? I don't feel safe anymore. I don't want to go there. So we've lost miles of trails to that type of use. Speaking to the HOT team, I've done ride-alongs with the HOT, and I do my first ride-along with the HOT team next week. And so they are very open to having just normal everyday civilians. If you want to go out and see, not as many people can do that because it's during the normal work days and things of this nature, but is there something that our normal citizens, everyday folks, could do to plug in, to become a little bit more aware of things that are helping this situation, and how can they become a part of a solution? I know a lot of people, they want to, whether that's volunteering with the local church that's doing food drives or whatever it happens to be, but are there ways for our citizens to become more involved, because they'd be more aware, and I think people become more compassionate, but then also it gives them an avenue to help. And we have a lot of people around here that would probably be able to help.
Well, first of all, if it's an emergency situation, you call 911, right?
Yeah.
But, so I just wanted to prep that before I share the next thing. But if there's something that's not right in the city, there's what we call Go COS app. And I have used this like a lot. I might be a frequent flyer. Because it's really cool, because you can go in and you can put whatever the issue is. You type it in, you get location, maybe add a picture, do whatever safely. And then you press a button and I get an email back that says, thank you very much, and we're going to get on that, we'll report to you. And usually, maybe by the end of the day or something like that, someone's responded that says, hey, we're going to check this out, maybe tomorrow, we'll get back to you. But there's a process that you can actually engage with the city with this Go COS app. And I've been pretty impressed by it. So when I've had...
It's a powerful tool.
Yeah, it really is. And it could be anything. I mean, it could be a pothole, it could be in a homeless situation, it could be, some code enforcement or something that looks dangerous, whatever it might be. I mean, I took a picture, there was this kind of a wire system box that was kind of dangling from, and I'm like, is that safe? And so I took a picture of it, sent it to utilities. but to send it to this, they sent it to utilities, and utilities said, well, that's actually the phone company. But we'll let them know about it, because it did look dangerous to me, you know, would that start a fire, would that do whatever, right? So, I mean, there's just things like that. If anytime I've seen something that I thought was dangerous, I try to, like, take a picture, do a little report, send it in, so.
They used to have a civic superhero class where you learned about that.
So I'll give you another anecdotal example. My district is the Briargate North area, the northern part, and had a citizen call me about a street light that's dead. The light is out, been that way for a while, and he wanted me to report it. I said, first name's Jeff. Jeff, if I do that, they're going to respond to me. I want you to try the Go COSS app, because I want to see if it works. And he did. He took, every street light is a number, and that number is identified obviously to that location and stuff. He took a picture of that, sent it. Within 3 days, they'd come out and replace the light without me, getting involved.
Right.
And I'd rather do it that way and see what kind of response we as a city have to these kinds of issues. Again, a single anecdotal kind of thing, but I think that addresses.
Yeah, and we hear those stories all the time,
Yeah.
Randy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just a single incident.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time, that somebody reports something and it's responded to immediately.
Are you guaranteeing 3-day response?
No.
Please get that on film.
After 3 days, you can call me.
I did want to touch on something else, though, that you mentioned, Alan, which is the other component that the city really doesn't have any purview over, which is the faith-based community and nonprofits. We're not a human services organization. We don't have a health department. We don't have a Department of Human Services within the city. County, of course, does, but we don't have any purview over that. Maybe if Dave gets elected, he will, but at the moment, we don't. And so I think it's important to understand the distinction, because a lot of citizens, and I know you guys in this room are obviously educated, but for the average person on the street, they may not understand and probably don't even care the distinction between what the city does have purview over and what the city does not. And so I just want to underscore that we are core public safety, police and fire. We are core public works, but we are not a human services organization. So if you want to be able to help a homeless community beyond just kind of getting them situated and off the street, I think it's about getting involved with an organization, a nonprofit or some other community organization that really can make that difference. So just want to make sure that.
Well, and I would reiterate that that's really important, that handing money to a homeless person is just allowing him, he's just wasteful. He's just going to use it for the next drugs. Because he can get all the food he wants. He can have a shelter. He can go to the rescue mission and have a shelter. And so we have, and that's like what he just pointed out, what Brian pointed out. We have partnered with great partners, the rescue mission definitely being one of them, and we actually support the rescue mission as a city. And they've actually done a really good job. But they also have a standard. I mean, they have to keep the bar a little bit high in order to protect the community that's there. And what's an interesting deal is that it used to be dominated by men, and it's getting close to 50-50, because women are actually finding it as a safe place to go. So there's a lot of talk about the rescue mission not being safe. Well, if it wasn't, then you wouldn't see women going there, right? So anyway, so their women's program is greatly advanced, so it's really done really well. So because we're seeing more and more women out on the street,
Unfortunately, and children.
and children too.
What other, yep.
So I got two separate points on the
Yeah.
law enforcement piece.
Yeah.
First being the morale. In my little mind, morale has to do with the judicial system. If you take the trash off the streets and the trash goes back on the streets, you're gonna have a morale problem. It's like you do your job and then somebody makes you do your job over and over and over again. So it would be wonderful if the city leaders, and we got, a third of the council here, could influence up there somehow on the judicial side. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, my daughter works at a store where they have Steve's just walking out with stuff.
Yeah.
The police don't do a darn thing about it. Because there's no recourse. They're just gonna be out on the street doing the same thing the next day. So that's the first piece of morale. I think that's probably the highest percentage of the reason they have a poor morale.
Dave touched on that, the idea that this guy has 12 warrants out for his arrest, not 13, and so it's not working time. I think, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think that in large part, we all completely agree with what you're saying. I think that we do need to have a really strong judicial system, and the challenge with that is that, unfortunately, the county jail is kind of where a lot of those folks end up, and that's county. They're overstressed, right? The jail last year was at or above capacity 90-some-odd% of the time.
And it's the largest jail in the state.
And exactly. So there's that component of it. The other thing I'll say is that with District Attorney Michael Allen, we have a very strong district attorney here. He will prosecute without question anybody and everybody that he can, because he believes very strongly in what you're talking about. If you look at the difference, the Common Sense Institute made a really interesting comparison between the city and county of Denver and, I'll say, Colorado Springs / El Paso County. In the city and county of Denver, it was something like, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but you can look it up on the Common Sense Institute website. Something like 80% of criminal activity was intervened in some fashion, an arrest, some way of law enforcement interacting or intervening. Of the 80%, something like only 20% was actually prosecuted. Okay, City and County of Denver, 20% of criminal acts were actually prosecuted. In El Paso County, it's like 90% of crimes being committed are being solved or being intervened with in arrests and so forth. And of that, I believe it is 98% are being prosecuted. So, and again, those are not things that we as City Council have direct purview over, but I think it speaks to the fact that in El Paso County, we feel very strongly about having law and order here, right? Having a community that is run with that in mind.
And we do have a camping ordinance that's a little bit stronger than other communities that we have been able to leverage. 100 feet for any waterway, you're not allowed to camp, and so that's a tool that we've given our city police officers to
And the
use.
sit-lie ordinance.
And the sit-lie ordinance also. It's not as
Downtown.
So the sit-lie ordinance is downtown,
just
right?
downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically they just move up on the west side and they infiltrate on the west side.
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes.
So, I mean, great, we have a good looking downtown because of that, but other parts of the city suffer from that.
So we're looking at
Keep pushing it out.
So we're going to keep pushing it out. Me and Brian are working on a safety zone. So currently there's a 100-foot safety zone around any school, and where there can be no drugs and
No weapons.
no weapons or no drugs. And we're looking to try to see if we could sit-line kind of added to that.
And hopefully expand it beyond just 100 feet. We're talking about, a city block or something.
I want to throw in the responsibility of the state. The state has a huge responsibility of passing laws that allow our district attorney to prosecute more. Honestly, the bar that both the police and the district attorney have is way too high. And a lot of that has to do with the state. And again, without getting political, it's because of the majority that we have in both the state house and the state senate that makes enforcement of laws harder. That's a fact, without getting political, but it's just a fact. It's one piece of many things that make crime, even though I think the briefings I've gotten over the last couple of years is that almost all of our crime in the city of Colorado Springs has actually been reduced by our police force enforcing and our judicial system, 4th District, Michael Allen, prosecuting. I believe that. It's not where we want it, but I believe it's better. Here's my 2 cents.
Well, wouldn't the percentages that you just quoted, Brian, wouldn't that lead to, we would expect higher morale? Right, because we have a very aggressive prosecuting level relative to other communities.
I would agree with that, but to Randy's point, the problem is that a lot of it are, misdemeanor offenses or small offenses that they may be in jail for a week or 10 days and then they're back out on the street. And again, it goes to some of the state laws that we're sort of bound by, unfortunately.
And really back to that, so we discovered this morale thing through the union that was passed to the mayor, that he told us, and then we immediately said, hey, we want to know about that. So it's not, we're looking to work on that and improve that. We see that as definitely an area to kind of elevate. There are other areas though that we have kind of worked on. One is the Parks Department has added 4 park rangers to our creek corridors.
And the trails that were mentioned as an issue.
Yeah. So we have 4 park rangers right now that we've never had before, that are out there monitoring to get to know these people and say, hey, you can't camp here, you gotta move on, that kind of stuff. And they'll also respond to the Go COS app too on stuff like that. The other point to make is that the HOPS team has been funded by a grant program that our fire department got created and found out about. And although we took across the board cuts this last year, we found a way to make that, they're in the general fund now. So the HOPS team is now, we've seen the success of it, and we have elected to make that part of something that we wanted to support. So that's locked in now.
On that point, does the city have any type of administrative group that works on those type of things, the grants that are out there available?
Yes. Yeah. They're always looking for things like that. So.
They'll take donations too.
Exactly.
Second point with the law enforcement is that, I think we're all in agreement, we're low on law enforcement officers, right? So, why are we, the city, then allowing the officers to, for lack of a better term, be rented out to stores? Shields, Dillard's, Walmart. In those situations, they're protecting merchandise, they're not protecting people. Why aren't they being paid overtime, which the police chief said we have plenty of money for overtime? Why aren't they working overtime, protecting citizens versus protecting stuff?
So are they in uniform?
Yes.
Okay.
They're in uniform and they're driving the police cruisers, which we're paying for those activities.
Which means that they're on duty, which I would assume means.
Well, you do have to pay. So
It's a small fee that goes to the city, but that's not helping the patrol of the city, the citizens. This is protecting store stuff.
it's traditionally something that's been done to help with businesses from time to time. I have, in my business, hired a police officer for an event that I put on here.
Off duty or?
Off duty.
Yeah, off duty.
Yeah, he's off duty, but there's one rate where you can just get the police officer, and there's another rate where you can have the car also. And of course, I like a flashing car out in front, so I always get that option. But you're right. So this last year, we weren't able to get them because they weren't available.
But they were available to multiple businesses and homeowners associations and different things like that.
Yeah.
Why don't we just put the kibosh on that and say, hey, knock it off, we're short on the streets.
I think there's a little bit of that, but it's. I think you have to think holistically about that crime that's taking place. Okay. I can tell you, I talked to a security agency that works with one of these larger stores, and 2 years ago, of all of their stores across America, the #1 store for shoplifting was ours. And And so they have put in a huge amount of security now. So where they have cameras, they have license plate readers. I mean, it was pretty impressive where I could, they actually invited me in so I could see everything that was going on. They found a salesperson on the floor, found an open package, and they were able to pull it out. And she calls them, they find her with the cameras, and then they roll back until they find the guy that put the package there. They rolled it back some more, found him walking and getting out of his car, rolled it back more and found the license plate. Now they put together the license plate, this guy, this, all this, and they hand it to the police officers, and it's immediate conviction. So that's what stores are actually doing without any police officers. So, but on top of that, there's something about having a police officer at the front door that helps when you have this major investment in our community. I mean, there's employees there that need to be looked at too. So
people there at the stores are, I mean, they're not going in there guns blazing and rob, to rob the place. They're going in there to steal, burglarize, shoplift.
yeah,
Whereas we're lacking people in our neighborhoods
yeah.
for public safety, not for stuff safety, public safety, and we're lacking there. Why do we continue to allow this? I don't have any problem with the stores, having those security things like you're saying, and hiring security firms.
Right.
That's them hiring them. These are the police officers, like you said, we put a lot of time, effort, money into those stores, trained them very well, and then we're giving them away. Well, not giving them, but you know what I'm saying.
It could be an element where that police officer would prefer to choose his off time to be more in a relaxed setting of sitting in front of a store than out cuffing some homeless person, with all that stress. It could be just, changing the atmosphere. So it might be a situation where that police officer has options. It could be that. I'm just spitballing here because I don't know a direct answer to your question.
I just think that should be looked into. Is if we have a shortage, why are we running them out? I like that, in better terms.
Well, we got to lower the crime rate.
Right.
No matter what it is. So.
But I'd rather lower the crime rate for the public versus the stores. Stores can hire security firms to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point, and I think we
private
have to go
citizens
back
can.
and have a conversation with the police department about that to understand, because I was not aware that uniformed officers were being stationed at retail outlets. So,
Yeah.
other questions or any topics on public safety?
Oh yeah, it's fire mitigation. We just haven't made it all the way down to the bottom of the page.
We haven't made it down to that part because really when you say public safety, we're not always talking about just cops, right? We're talking about, will your house burn down?
I attended, I'm in District 1,
Yeah.
and so Dave Donaldson did a town hall, and fire chief was one of the speakers, and it was a hot button issue for a lot of folks, especially along the west side,
Yeah.
and in areas where there's higher fire danger and what have you. But how is the city kind of tackling that right now, just because the entire city is at risk at some level?
Well, I think one element, it's actually come out a couple of times in some of the approvals or things that have come before us. One of the issues is really measuring the risk. Okay, if you have a 50-acre parcel that is just completely free of all development, it's open space, right? So you have weeds and fuel loads all building up in there. At some point, that actually becomes a pretty large risk. And grass fires can move pretty quickly, as we know. And for me, I know some of the reasons the Marshall Fire moved so quickly is because in the communities that it moved in had very large open space areas that were not mitigated really at all, or had older style homes that didn't really have great protection about fire rolling up to the house. And so one of the things I pointed out that the fire inspector agreed with and pointed out more is sometimes development comes in with trees and grass and things that hold moisture, and actually lowers the risk of that fire quite a bit. And so that's why you have to kind of think of a holistic kind of approach to it. You know, I think it's that kind of thing. Right now, I mean, because of Waldo, we don't have a large risk right now because we don't have the fuel loads up on that hillside. It's going to take, it's going to take 20 years before we get to a place like that. We'll get there, right? But then can we do stuff, you know, in the in-between? And that's where there are some areas of our forest that we're looking to do fire mitigation. The Forest Service has focused all of their attention to fire mitigation. There's been a lot of federal money that's being poured in right now for that. We'll probably see small fires and things like that, controlled fires happen this summer, particularly in the springtime where things are sometimes more moist after storms and things like that. Okay, it's all related to how much humidity is in the air and things like that. I'm no expert, but they have certain times where they kind of do those kind of activities. So I think those are some of the issues. I think we just have to kind of recognize, well, what is the actual danger, and then how do we address that danger? And it's because it was so emotional. I mean, Waldo Canyon was very emotional. We can still, though, prepare for the next Waldo. I mean, be honest. I mean, the Broadmoor's at risk right now.
The entire southwest area of the city is.
The fuel loads there are big, and those are areas they're looking to address. And so I think our fire chief has laid out a pretty good strategy of when and if those things kind of happen. And I think we saw that in the Bear Creek fire. I mean, that fire blew up really quick, and they were on it, and it was done.
So at the farm fire in my district.
Yeah.
Can I ask, were you there at Dave Donaldson's
Yep.
come out with the chief?
Yep.
I'm assuming the chief talked about several things. One being the evacuation system
Yes.
that they put in place over 2 years ago when I was on council, and you know, we got a lot of controversy over that. But we collectively, as a council, looked at all the different options, and we thought the recommendation that both the fire department and the police department recommended, it's evergreen and peak alert and those kinds of things where we sign up. I know I'm signed up. So I'm up at the north end. I'm close to Black Forest. I'm really not at risk, but I have neighborhoods up there that I know that are some risk. But I also know if you sign up for those things, you're going to get specified alerts. I'm sure that I believe the chief probably talked about this.
Oh, we did.
About how not everybody's going to need to evacuate. You're not going to put 40,000 people on the streets all at once if you have to do any kind of evacuation. It's going to be segmented in pieces at a time. So it is different than the Waldo Canyon or the Black Forest fire from 2012, 2013. It just is. The equipment that the fire department, I'm sure, again, I wasn't there, but I'm sure he talked about the systems we have in place, the drone systems, the fire mitigation systems that are ongoing, and the way to attack those kinds of wildfire right now versus just a regular home fire.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job. And I live right behind U Valley Park. And so the 346 houses that burnt to the ground are right on the other side of Centennial from us. And we were evacuated for 5 days. And so I thought I was somewhat up to speed on some of the new things that have been put into place. And I like the alerts, what have you. But he really did a great job of overviewing.
And it's our job to get that information out. That is what I believe our job as a city council is, to help the police and fire department get that kind of information out there.
Yeah, and so we put it in our newsletter every week. So we put our next week's newsletter, did a whole
Again,
piece just on that.
Yes, was there controversy 2-3 years ago about which system to use? Absolutely. And did all the people agree with us? No, absolutely they did not. But we took all the information and we made a judgment call, we made a decision based upon all that information we had and the recommendations from the fire department and the police department, and made the recommendation to go with that particular evacuation idea, plan, whatever you want to call it. So that's my perspective of what we've done over the last 3 years from a city perspective. Colorado Springs, like the majority places in the country have risk. If we want to live here, there's risk. And I think we all know that. It's how you mitigate the risk. I'll give you a perfect example. Up in my district, north of here, on a relatively new subdivision called The Farm, it's almost exactly 2 years ago. If you know where I-25, you know where exit 153 is. That's where the new INT building, it's where the Wolf Hotel,
Great Wolf.
Great Wolf Lodge is. A fire started, and again, it was human made through some welding equipment and things like that. The way it started on the southwest side of The Farm subdivision. And I just happened to be out driving around, and all of a sudden I see this. So I go up there, but I stay out of the way. I'm completely out of the way. And I'm watching the police evacuate the farm, and I'm watching the fire department go in and start to attack. I can't see them attacking, but I kind of can from my location. And what I found out later is the way the development was built on the north, west, and south side of the development is mitigated area. I don't know the exact distance, between 40 and 50 feet from where the last house is to that particular grassy or wooded area, grassy area. And so it's been mitigated, that it's basically just dirt, 40 to 50 feet from behind. That seems to be, from a development standpoint, and I look for that in every development that I help approve on the city council. Those are the kinds of things I look for that developers do. And then later, when I saw on the news about the fire as it was approaching that mitigated area, it could not leap. That fire was intense. It couldn't reach the yards or the fence that was closest to the housing area. That mitigated area prevented that. That's just my opinion. Again, that's something I think I know and I see and I try to ask about when we're evaluating development areas. And again, there are risks. Living on the beach in Miami has a risk. Living in I've lived in San Bernardino, California on a fault line has its risk.
We ignore it, right?
Yeah. Living in Idabel, Oklahoma, in the tornado belt, has its risk. It's how you mitigate that.
Downtown Chicago.
That's right.
So anyway, I've talked too much. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. And I don't want to cut the conversation short because public safety was the top thing on Dave's list, but I do want to just remind everybody it's almost 7 o'clock. So in respect for your time, we don't want to keep you here all night. If there are some other topics that you want to switch to, we can do that. If you want to keep talking about these important public safety discussions, that's great too. So just want to throw that out there. Any preference? Any other questions that we didn't, or topics that we didn't address that you want to touch on? All right. Well,
Public safety seems to be kind of right there. I think affordability, so that you guys know, this is, we talk about affordability like almost every single week. And we're looking at things that are coming to us to bring more affordable housing to our community. But it has to fit. It has to fit right and sound right? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But we're definitely in a mindset of how can we address that, and we're kind of letting it know that we're going to do everything we can to push those kind of projects forward. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of a push, I want to say. So, and it makes it tough when some of these things go in areas that are a little bit more contentious.
And just to tag on to that, I want to be real clear that when Dave says affordable housing, he's not talking low-income housing. And I think that's really the big distinction. A lot of people get hung up on the idea that it's subsidized housing, that it's low-income housing, that it's, kind of sort of homeless shelters for people that are trying to get people off the street into that type of housing. What we're talking about is really workforce housing. It's attainable housing. It's housing for the police officers, for the firefighters, for the teachers, for the barista that works at Starbucks. It's for, you know, the sort of the workforce in our community. And these are upstanding, contributing members of our community. These are the people that we interface with every single day. So when you hear that term affordable housing, just know that it doesn't mean low-income housing. There's a huge distinction. And finally, I'll just comment that again, like we were talking about some of the public safety issues, there are some state issues that are causing and have caused for the better part of 2 decades our inability to address attainable housing. So last week I was up at the state Capitol testifying with Mayor Yemi and with a number of people from the chamber and EDC on a bill that is proposing to fix construction defect litigation. So in 2007, there was a law passed at the state level that basically makes it really convenient and really easy for litigation attorneys to go, you know, dismantle a condominium and find all the defects and coerce the homeowners association into filing a lawsuit against the developer. From 2007, before 2007, about 25% of all housing stock that was built was condominiums. After 2007, we saw a rapid decline to where today it's actually zero. Zero condominiums were built in El Paso County last year, and really statewide, very, very, very few condos were built anywhere. And so when we talk about housing affordability and housing attainability, condos are that stepping stone, right? You think about, how can I own a home? How can I have home ownership as opposed to renting an apartment in an affordable way that gets my foot in the door to start building some equity? Condos historically have always been that vehicle. And so without that as part of our tool, in our toolkit for housing, we're really stuck. And so that's why we've been faced with that problem as long as we have here in Colorado Springs. And that's one of the reasons why I felt like it was really important to go testify at the state level to try to fix that.
And Tuesday, we actually even had an interesting project that came before us, an apartment complex that's townhomes that are for rent. So it's going to be townhomes for rent, with the idea that if we can get that changed, the developer would like to flip, turn it on and sell them. But he's caught right now that he can't do that right now. He can't sell them because it doesn't make sense to him.
Well, it really comes down to insurance. You can't insure a project like that. And,
Right.
and actually a lot of current condominium owners can't get reasonable insurance. So that's really what the big issue has been, is that because litigation is so likely and so prevalent with condominium developments, the economics of it and the liability associated with it is a deal breaker. So.
When you get into affordability and housing, you get into the growth question. Do you do the infill? Do you do annexations? Do you they cross over? How do you deal with that? With the negativity on the infill that you want to get utilize the land appropriately. There's no condos, so you can't do it as dense as you want. I mean, there's so many conflicts there to deal with. It's got to be difficult to communicate to the public how to deal with it.
It's a complex issue, without question. And in my view, and if you look at some of the national studies that have been done on housing affordability and attainability, most experts will tell you that you need a mix. You need kind of everything. You need infills. You need single-family detached dwellings. You need apartments. You need condos. You need townhomes. You need tiny homes. And so I guess my answer to that is that we need diversity in the housing market, and that means, in my view, that there will be places where it makes a lot of sense for the infill development at a higher density. I think that it also makes sense to have single-family homes or new mixed well, master planned communities, right, that would be built in other parts of the community. So how we articulate that and explain that to citizens is very tricky because it's a very complex question. I'm an architect by background, right? I do land planning and I'm involved in all those kinds of things all the time. And I have a hard time understanding the nuances sometimes of the distinctions of is this a good thing or not. So to the average layperson, it's really difficult.
When you were up in the Capitol, did you get a sense whether construction defect legislation had some momentum to come out, or is it still being a lot of resistance?
I think this year, in light of what happened last year with the idea of having statewide control over zoning and taking away local control from local governments to make decisions about land use,
Right.
I think there is a renewed interest in fixing that, fixing construction defect litigation as an alternative to zoning control. So I would say that there is more interest in the discussion. I unfortunately am not very sure how likely it is that our friends up north would pass something like that. And I think it is largely due, again, not to get too political, but I think it's largely due to a different mindset around what a community should look like, and that the folks in Denver have a different view of what that means.
Well, thank you for going up and doing that. It's something that needs to be fixed, and you can't see kind of.
Well, I agree completely, and the problem is that where this particular bill, it's still in committee. There are some amendments being proposed.
Right.
We're hopeful that it makes it out of committee. It's a Senate bill, and if it were to be passed by the Senate, we just don't know if the House would also pass
It's
it.
the right of repair would go a long ways.
Right. Yeah. So.
Well, I have, you get an opportunity to see an unapproved logo. Tomorrow, it may be approved, but I begged them to let me share our initiative that's coming. So this is not approved yet.
So don't post it on social media tonight.
Not today. I saw you take the picture. And I asked him, I said, I can't prevent someone from taking a picture of that. He's like, it'll be fine. Because it's not going to probably change that much. And
Yeah.
so we're going to meet with the mayor tomorrow, and the mayor will bless it or not. And it's likely to bless it. I mean,
Cool.
So this will be going forward our initiative called 1,000 Neighborhood Gatherings. And so we're doing a challenge to see if we can get 1,000 block parties put together. We can't call it block parties because we can't block 1,000 neighborhoods. Public Works got really nervous quickly. And so we're looking at trying to find other ways other than blocking off your street that you can bring the community together and drive community connection. Because when we're really looking at having a healthy, strong community that's safe, it really starts at the family level. It starts at the neighborhood level, right? And so that's what we're really looking to promote and push this time. The 28th will be our official media broadcast. So you guys, this is what you get.
Preview
stuff.
It's pretty good.
No one else knows this. So the 28th will be our official announcement about it. And then the first kickoff will be the weekend of May 18th. So May 18th will be the kickoff, and we'll have several different block parties going on across the city. We have a sign-up page where someone who wants to lead a block party can go and put their name in, put where they live, what community they live in, and we'll be collecting all that kind of information. But we reached out to businesses, organizations like the utilities, and get businesses to kind of reach out to their employees and really kind of push this as an initiative for this summer. So we're pretty
I
excited.
think the snow is held off for.
I know. Well, I had to trade vehicles because my Mini doesn't have, so I brought my truck.
I do a block party every summer, sometime, not the same weekend every summer, but I've done them now for many years in my neighborhood, and it's actually grown. So just imagine if you could have 1,000 block parties over the course of time.
What's the reason for the block parties? Why is the government involved in this?
So we're trying to address a public health issue.
And there's no government money expended
No,
on this.
no.
This is all-
There's-
Staff time and all of
Yes,
that?
there is that.
Okay.
So right now, for over the last 10 years, El Paso County has led in suicides. So we are the #1 suicide rate county in the state. Colorado's #5 in the country. And so in terms of mental health, we are, let's just say we're horrible, because we are. I mean, I'll just put it right there. We don't have good resources, we don't have other things. So this was a way to just inspire our community, or a part of the mayor's activate, the fifth principle is community activation. So how do we activate the community? And so we've partnered with Cause I Love You and Visit Cause I Love You and Kono. They will be our key partners that are going to help bring communities together and do this. So a lot of Kono has a lot of resources and stuff to help do these parties. And so we're able to just latch ourselves onto that. NAMI and also UCCS are also going to be a part of this with the GRIT program. So that's going to be integrated into this. And it's really an opportunity to kind of really push our community in a direction of, hey, get to know your neighbors. The #1 reason for suicide is isolation and loneliness. And so how do we counteract that?
Yeah, I've never used any city staff for this. I always use HOA in my neighborhood and a couple connected neighborhoods. I just bring the HOA boards together and we do it that way. So, that's me.
So our involvement has really been to lead. That's what I think
Yeah.
public figures should do. We have a major crisis with mental health, and we're trying to address that head on. And City Council made mental health as a priority for this year to try to address or lean in on, and that's been what we're trying to do. So we see the problem as leaders. We're trying to figure out a way to address that because it's affecting.
And the county's on board as well.
Yeah, counties absolutely.
Well, thanks again, everyone,
Yeah.
for coming out. We really appreciate you being here
Yeah.
this evening. And if you have other questions or want to get in touch with us, I know Sam and Alex have some business cards and things like that. You obviously know where to track us down. So, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.